When you add an additional training focus, ball control, to a player's training regime, FM defines it as extra training on dribbling, first touch and technique. Understandable that technique is there because technique is essential to improve any individual skill. But for me, I see dribbling and first touch as two separate entities, and I would really like FM to separate those two things. Someone whose first touch is poor, I may not want them to work on their dribbling. There may be very little point. But it is what it is at the moment. And today in Understanding Football Manager A to Z, B is for ball control. And we're going to look at how this presents itself in the game, and we're going to look at some tips and tricks with regard to ball control that you can use when you're playing your saves. Let's go and kick some balls. Hello and welcome to FM with Old Man Phil, and I'm Phil, and if you're a first-time visitor, welcome to the channel. And in today's A to Z of Football Manager, today B is for ball control, and that means we are going to be looking at the skills of dribbling and first touch. FM also lumps together in ball control technique, which is of course understandable because technique is absolutely essential to develop when you are developing any of the skills in football. Technique is something that you will need in all aspects of football, and in FM, technique is defined as the attribute reflects the aesthetic quality of a player's technical game, how refined they are with the ball at feet. Technique is important to being able to pull off a tricky pass or cross-field ball. Technique, for me, is far more than what is defined by FM. For a forward, where finishing is a very important attribute, long shots also being quite important, then he needs good technique. For me, technique is about being able to get your body into the right position. When your body is in the correct position, of course, it has aesthetic value. A striker, for finishing, will need to keep his knee over the ball. He will need to keep his eye on the ball. He will need to get his body into the best position to put power through the ball, what in cricket is called timing. He will need to be able to position himself in such a way that he hits the sweet spot of the ball time and time again. This, for me, is technique, and the same will apply to passing, tackling, and any other skill in football. Someone with poor technique, for me, is not going to be able to pass the ball consistently well, is not going to be able to finish consistently well, or to dribble consistently well, or any of the other skills that we have in football. For me, when I'm recruiting, I need good technique. So firstly, we're going to take a quick look at first touch and how that doesn't seem to show itself clearly when you're watching the game in 3D graphics or even in the old style 2D classical view. But before we get on to that, this channel is set up to support the British Heart Foundation, and all ad revenue will be donated to that cause. So if you are new to the channel and you like FM content, why not consider subscribing? Then like, watch, comment, help the channel to grow, help us to support that very worthwhile cause. For me, a player's first touch then is basically about receiving the ball, and a player with good first touch will mean that he can control the ball very quickly and also place it into a useful position, the best position for him to then carry out his second action. And players with a very good first touch will be able to place the ball into a position to carry out their second action very quickly and very well. And the player who does not have as good a first touch may not be able to control the ball in that way, and may also be prone to losing the ball, especially if he is being closed down quickly. And so when it comes to representing this in the game, the graphic capability is not such that the game can show this very accurately. What we will normally see, especially if we are playing in key highlights, is what looks like absolute idiocy when a player just simply seems to give away the ball, or when he just stops doing what he's doing and the ball is taken from him. This is the fact that the graphics cannot represent what is going on. And I think more often we will see that a player just receives the ball and then takes a long time to complete the second action. Sometimes what happens then is the ball is taken off him. And I think this is how the game represents a poor first touch. Also, for me, first touch is not a standalone attribute, and there are several other attributes will have a significant effect on his first touch. Technique, of course, is going to be something very important, and also he will need a degree of anticipation. He will need to be able to anticipate where the ball is going to arrive. He will need composure, and especially need that if he is being pressed or closed down. And he will also need a level of agility, because the ball will not always arrive directly at his foot on the floor. He may need to get his body into some positions which may be quite awkward for some in order to control the ball and in order to place the ball ready for his second actions. So first touch is not a standalone attribute, and he will need all those other attributes to some degree in order to be very effective at controlling the ball. And so, in order to see how the game visualizes first touch, and also the effect of poor first touch on the player's rating, I played from my West Ham save the game away against Manchester United. Obviously, we were huge underdogs in this game, and so I was hoping that by playing it in full highlights, I would be able to see some examples of how the game visualized it, and then I would be able to relate that to a player's ratings. And here are some examples of exactly what we found. And several of the players had particularly bad games, including Gerard Bowen, funnily enough, he has 14 first touch, and players like Cresswell, who has 12 first touch, and Koufal, who only had 11 first touch, had particularly poor game. And here's an example. Koufal failed to control that ball. It was a desperately poor first touch. Koufal again, a minute later, when Bowen fed Koufal the ball, his first touch was very poor, got him into a position where he was unable to control it effectively, and the ball was lost. And then other examples of poor first touch. Gerard Bowen was unable to bring that ball down. Manchester United were able to take the ball away from us, and it resulted in a goal kick. Another dreadful first touch from Cresswell. Some of these first touches are clear and obvious first touches, but some of them are more of the type where the player's first touch is not good and slows him down and prevents him from being able to take the second touch very effectively. And this is the type of first touch error that I think we mostly see in the game, because the game's graphics are not able to represent first touch properly. Hopefully in the future, with better graphics, this will change. So what could we do in the second half? Well, one of the things that we noticed there is that it was pretty much the entire back line that was having trouble with its first touch. And one of the things that we could think about doing is reducing the tempo. If we can reduce the speed at which the ball is zipping around the pitch, then we have a better chance of controlling the ball more efficiently. But also, as it was the back line that was being pressurized into making errors of the first touch, then it is possible we could resolve the problem by dropping the line back a little bit. If your players are being pressed intensely, then it might be a good idea to drop the line back, which then in theory would give them more time to get the ball under control and to set themselves for the second action. Those are a couple of things that you might want to try if your back line in particular are showing evidence that their first touch during a game is particularly poor. Gerard Bowen, on the other hand, his first touch was pretty poor throughout the first half, and that's more difficult to explain as his first touch and composure are very decent indeed. But what I did notice was that Gerard Bowen was extremely anxious before going out before the game. He was very anxious about coming up against Casemiro. Totally unrealistic, because I don't think Gerard Bowen would be too unhappy about playing against Casemiro. So what happened was that throughout the first half, Gerard Bowen played in a very anxious state, and that would have affected his composure. And as we said earlier, first touch is not a standalone attribute, and without composure, he was also going to suffer in terms of his first touch. What could we do about that? I suppose in hindsight, we could have spoken to him individually before the game, told him to relax and to take the pressure off him a little bit. Telling him off during the first half, which I did on one occasion, would not help. That would only raise his anxiety levels. But also at halftime, we should be trying to calm him down again, take the pressure off him, and hopefully get him to relax more to improve his first touch. If that doesn't work, then you've tried your best, and maybe after 15 minutes or so, despite how good a player he is, it might be that he needs to be substituted. When a player with good touch is suffering, it's probably a psychological thing. It's probably to do with his emotional state, and if you can't resolve that, then there is no other option. And so first touch during the game is actually a very important attribute, and by making small changes during the game, you could influence just exactly how much of a problem first touch is, and you could resolve any issues that you might be having and turn the game around. And also, under the umbrella of ball control, FM places dribbling, and dribbling is a very important skill, and you should have some good dribblers within your team framework, even if you are a totally passing team. Good passers can open up an opposition defence. Creative players of that nature are very good at opening up the opposition defence, and they are also very useful at breaking the opposition lines. In other words, getting into the spaces between the lines. But there are also other ways to do that, and good dribblers can get past opponents and break the line in that way, thus creating space behind their opponent, drawing other opposition players onto them, thus creating space for players in more advanced positions. Good dribblers can be an asset for your team. Dribbling is also not a standalone attribute, and in order to dribble well, you will also need good technique. That stands to reason. The player will also need a fairly decent anticipation rating. In other words, he will be able to anticipate where his opponent is about to move. He will need composure. He will need to stay calm while he's dribbling. He will need good decisions. Whether or not to dribble is very important for him to decide. He will need acceleration. He will need agility. He'll need balance, and he will need pace. And a little bit of flair will also be helpful in terms of dribbling. So let's have a look at one of our players. I'm playing on the left wing there as an inverted winger is Vlasic. And on the surface of it, Vlasic has great dribbling. He has a good first touch. He has good technique. He has got good anticipation. He has great composure, concentration, decisions. He has good flair. He has acceleration, agility, balance, and pace. On the surface of it, we should be asking him to dribble more, and he is currently in a role as an inverted winger, which asks him to dribble more. However, often you do have to take into account the quality of the player that he is up against. Vlasic would be up against Dalot. Dalot is not renowned for being the best defender in the world, and he does have vulnerabilities. He doesn't possess the greatest of pace, balance, or agility. He's not the best tackler, and he doesn't have the best anticipation or decisions. He doesn't have many of the attributes that are needed to be a great defensive player, and so it might be worth asking Vlasic to run at Dalot. But in the case of Bowen, who is up against Luke Shaw and Casemiro on the other side, then it might not be a good idea to have Bowen dribbling so often. So we may need to change his role from an inside forward. As an inside forward, he's going to be asked to dribble more, and I don't want him, given the quality of the player that he's up against, I don't want him dribbling. So it might be to change his role to an advanced playmaker. As an advanced playmaker, he's going to pass the ball a lot more. He's going to take more risks in terms of his passing, and I can ask him to dribble less. And so ask him to pass the ball more often rather than to run at the defenders. Sometimes you just have to take into account the quality of the defender that the player is going to be up against. And so many of us, we just go into games without thinking, are my players able to dribble? We also go into games without looking at the opposition that they're likely to be up against. Fornals is likely to be up against a DM or 2 central defenders. It would be worth having a look at Fornals as a shadow striker. Has he got the dribbling capability to cope with defenders of the quality that Manchester United have? And looking at his attributes, he has dribbling of 13, he has technique 15, he has anticipation, he has composure, concentration. He doesn't possess pace or balance particularly. I might be tempted to say to Fornals, don't play as a shadow striker. Today I want you to play as an attacking midfielder, and I want you to dribble less. And then that means that he is less likely to dribble and take risks running with the ball when he doesn't have the ability to do so against the quality of defenders that he's up against. And that means there's less risk of turning the ball over in that way. He does have an ability to play as an attacking mid on attack, so we'll use him in that way for this game. Scamacca does not have the pace or the dribbling attributes necessary to run at the Manchester United defence, so we would be requiring him to dribble less and just to look for better opportunities to score his goals. It's really important that you actually set the roles up for your players that mean that you are capable of retaining the ball. Don't ask your players to run with the ball if they are not capable of running with it. Against weaker opposition, we may want them to run at the defence much more, but against Manchester United, it's probably not a good idea. Dribbling can be useful to you in other ways too. For example, if you are, as West Ham have been set up, a very good passing side, and we look to play a very patient, controlled passing game, working the ball into the box, and everything is very slow, done with good passing, then if you are struggling to break defences down, then this may be because you cannot break the lines down. So instead of playing a passing game, then you may wish to up the tempo a little bit and to actually run at the defence rather than try to pass to break the lines. Have the players run at the defence and try to break the lines by means of superior dribbling. However, I would be very careful about clicking run at defence, because this will affect the whole team and it will encourage players who are not so good at dribbling, for example, perhaps your centre-backs, to go and dribble. We also know that Souček is not the best dribbler in the world, so it may encourage him to do so. So I would prefer to just click on the players and to tell individual players who do have the necessary dribbling skills to dribble more rather than the entire team. Now I know this takes a little bit more time than just clicking on dribble more for the entire team, but it might pay off at the end of the day. If you don't have the players who can dribble more and it is late in the game and you are looking to score a goal, then make your substitutions for dribblers. And for example, we identified that Fornals might not be the best dribbler in the world. Well, Benrahma certainly is a very good dribbler of the ball, and he has all the necessary attributes to run at the opposition as a shadow striker. He's the kind of person you would like to say to dribble more, run at the defence, cause problems. And then finally, when you are a goal up with 7 or 8 minutes left and you have made the decision to go into your very defensive shape and hold on, and so you have gone to a system which uses much shorter passing, you're going to be time wasting, you're going to be holding on to the ball, you are going to be more disciplined, and you are going to be holding your shape, slowing the pace down, and you are going to be coming off the trigger press. You are going to go into a low block and stop crosses. What you are essentially doing is that you are just going to try and control the possession. You are not going to allow the opposition, if possible, to have the ball, and you're going to slow everything down. in order to do that. But one of the ways that you could get into trouble and could turn the ball over is through dribbling. If your players are going to be dribbling and carrying the ball, there is a chance, especially against bigger opposition, that they will turn over the ball and counter attack. And so what I would do is I would go ahead and click dribble less, and this will instruct the entire team to dribble less and to look for a pass which would be more consistent with holding on to the ball. And so adjusting your dribbling instructions can get you out of trouble defensively as well as offensively. And that's it for this video. If you are brand new to the channel and you like FM content, then why not subscribe, like, watch, comment, help the channel to grow. Help us to support the British Heart Foundation, the very worthwhile cause that you can see scrolling up above. And that's it for B is for ball control. And when we come back with the next one of the A to Z of Football Manager, we will be looking at something that begins with the letter C. Thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope we'll see you next time.